We will go ahead and begin our post-race media availabilities. We are now joined by our race-winning crew chief, Chris Gayle. Chris, congratulations for 2 in a row. Can you just talk us through the race tonight?
Yeah, I think we thought we were going to have a lot better car based on practice and qualifying than what we did. Didn't really have a good enough long-run car, and probably not the speed that the 12 car had by any stretch. Worked on it all day, got it a little better. Caught the one caution right there in stage 2 to kind of get the track position back from where we had lost it earlier. It's kind of unique, right? We pitted with the 3 laps on tires early, which was probably the wrong call on my part, but even then we had a bad pit stop, right? And we lost 5 spots on pit road from all the guys who took tires, and the 23 was able to get positions back, and we were kind of stuck. So that caution stage 2 really helped us there, but I knew then that the pit crew was disappointed about that, but it's like, okay, that's one thing to be disappointed about, but it's not going to be your last opportunity. I didn't know necessarily how this was going to play out to where they would have the opportunity on the green-white checker to get the win. So, for those guys, man, they are just villains. I mean, they just want that moment to where they can go in there and just rip everybody's hearts out and win the race and walk away and don't care what anybody else thinks, unapologetic, and they're just awesome. So I'm happy to be part of their team, pretty much.
Awesome. Well, congratulations again. We'll go ahead and open it up for questions. If you have one, please raise your hand, and we'll get a mic over to you. We'll start right here in the middle with Jacob.
Jacob Searman, Race Face Digital. Chris, what's the challenge on a day like today when you have somebody like Byron who is so good for so long, and you're just sitting there looking at that back bumper and knowing you're trying to find something to get close to that 24, but obviously before it plays out the way it does at the end, it's kind of a tough battle there.
Yeah, I mean, you were looking at certain cautions and how are the long stretches. Is there going to be some way we can get an advantage with what we have versus others? And we knew we did not have a strong car on the long run, and we thought we were going to be disadvantaged by, it would have been great to short pit. One play we could have short pitted really early, and then had we caught a caution, maybe we'd been okay. But if you don't and that thing plays green, we were really bad after 50 laps, and then we knew we were going to give everything back towards the end. So you just look for that unique opportunity to kind of do something different. And then where they pit, we knew they were going to get short pit by the 45 once he came. It kind of played out to where, okay, we should be able to get past them as long as this plays out and goes green to the end. I don't think we accounted for the 12 being quite that strong. We knew he was strong, but he was far enough back that we didn't quite see him coming. And then he had enough pace it didn't really matter. So I think that's it. Just looking for something unique to either caution-wise, or could you go long or short in a different scenario and make it play out in your favor? When, especially in our situation, I talked about it last week, right? We've got the one win from last week. You can kind of do something different as long as it makes sense and play to a caution or something that might help you get some track position when that's really what we needed. I don't think we would have held off the 12 car and maybe not the 24 on equal tires on a restart for more than 10 laps, but you don't know. You need to give yourself that opportunity to find out.
And you alluded to it, what you said last week about how, okay, a win opens up the playbook. How big does the playbook open now with 2 wins in the bank?
I mean, I think it's the same, right? I think all the 50-50 calls you can try to flip and push towards playoff points, however that suits you,
We'll come down here to Jordan in the middle, and then in the back to Tim.
Jordan Bianchi, The Athletic. How much of a track position race was this today? Because it just looked like it was so hard to pass.
Yeah, it was. I think if you were listening to our radio, I think you heard Denny say a couple times, he's just like, I just need clean air. I can't get, I'm just where I am. We weren't good enough, so after you had run probably 50, we fell off on that one run, but that's the last 10 laps. But even through 40, 42 laps, it was hard to pass. I think you saw that, right? Once everybody flipped track position after that caution, the 45 came through there. Not many others came through that quickly, the 12 a little bit, but that was it.
So we've seen this car race so well on intermediate tracks, other mile and a halves. Why does track position matter here so much compared to, say, Kansas or something like that, where you have more movement? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you have more movement at Kansas, more multiple grooves where you can go where you're in clean air and still run fast laps. I think that especially once tires wear here, it gets, you have a little bit of the bottom in 3 and 4, but the car's got to be really good to do that once a guy's up in the wall in 3 and 4 after there's more than 15, 20 laps on tires. And then even in 1 and 2, it gets to be hard to find, you're searching for gray and trying to find places to pass. But that's my take. That'd be a great question for Denny, but I think that what I see is there's just nowhere to go where you aren't affected by the air, whereas some places like Kansas, with multiple grooves, you can really get out of the air and still keep runs.
We'll go in the back to Tim, and then right up here in the front to Bob.
Tim Moore, Motorsports Today. Chris, you alluded to the 45 strategy. I'm just wondering from your side. I know Christopher was very surprised how quick 45 kind of got through, undercutting them only by 2 laps. I know you guys went longer, but were you guys surprised how big of a gap Reddick had with their strategy?
No, I think we look at all those scenarios and then you fit it to like, okay, what do I have for a car today? Because we had talked about that strategy and we're like, okay, we don't have a good long run car, so if we do this strategy, we're rolling the dice for a caution before they get to us, and that we don't fall off really heavily in the last 10 laps if we're at a 60 lap run towards the end of the race. And if it goes green, we're going to be way worse than second or third based on our long run strategy. But that was an option that we had discussed trying to pull the trigger on potentially, but it's just a play for a caution. For them, they probably had a little better long run speed, or maybe they didn't quite know and they're like, okay, this is the only one that works for us. We're behind the 11 already, so if they go long, we can't do anything different, and it might have just been that for them.
And I'm wondering to get your feelings and emotion. Last week, of course, Denny comes out, has the fastest car all day and comes out. But is it more fulfilling this week to have a team effort come up there in a big moment and you guys show a very big clutch moment to get a win?
Well, I'm super pumped for the pit crew. I think, yes, the unity in the team, this is awesome for them. Their confidence, right? They've been P1 for a while. They've been the best pit crew. But to be able to, show that with a win directly from what they did on the last pit stop is super for them. For me, from a standpoint, I'm going to nitpick the car and be upset that we didn't have a better car, didn't have a better long-run car. The things we tried to do didn't necessarily work out as well as we had hoped. But from a team standpoint, I love it. I love that, at least the camaraderie with all those guys and getting to enjoy that moment with them is there.
Come down here to Bob.
Bob Parkhurst, Fox Sports. Denny talks a lot about getting to 60 wins. I was curious, 2 weeks ago, were you thinking, how in the world am I going to get him to 60? And now are you like, man, maybe should we try to get 60 before the playoffs?
Okay, Bob, no pressure, right? You're pushing the number higher now, okay? I don't worry about it, to be honest with you. I was worried about that first one. I think I alluded to this last week. I knew, I'm coming in filling big shoes for Gabard. He's been with Denny for that long. I'm the only change, so very clear in my mind that I'm not naive enough to know that I need to win and win early. So last week was great, right? We were able to win with a different setup, with something we worked on, came up with, and have car speed, and to get that out of the way. This one, I was surprised. We didn't obviously just had the right scenario, but you take those, right? You take all the ones that you can steal somehow, and then get all the ones that you're the strongest car, and you'll be in good shape. We won't worry about if we get to 60. I don't know. I'll have to think if I'm going to go that long if he gets to 60.
We'll come down here to Chris, and then over here to Dustin.
Chris Murdoch, NASCAR.com. Apologies if this has already been asked. I was spending some time out there on pit road with your pit crew, and they were just so appreciative of the moment coming down on the money stop. When you're up on the box and it comes down to that in that situation, what kind of words of encouragement, motivation, or what is it like on top of the pit box when it comes to that?
I really just encouraged them on the radio. You guys don't hear it because we're talking on a private channel, but I just basically said, this is the stop that's going to matter. I got confidence in you guys. Let's go get it. Let's go get the win right here. And nothing more than that. Like, we have these conversations in the shop, and I can tell you the one thing that every one of those guys has come to me about is that situation. And how much they want to be in that situation, right? Some people shy away from that moment and get nervous and like, ooh, I don't want to fail. These guys are completely the other way. They're like, give me the opportunity and let me try it, And I think you just can't commend that enough. You need that kind of culture and that kind of outlook from everybody on your team.
All right, we'll take one last question here from Dustin.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. Chris, can you just give me a sense in terms of strategy play with that last green flag cycle?
Yep.
Was there really anything that any other crew chief did that was surprising? I mean, wasn't it pretty much you're in a certain position, you probably need to pit early, you need to pit late, type of thing, that it was more of a formula than really a crew chief doing something out of the ordinary?
I don't know. You could argue I didn't look completely at the 45's long run pace. I would say that they knew that maybe since it was such a track position race and hard to pass, they're like, okay, if I can get in front of the 24 and capture this, then I can control the race. Like I said, I knew that we probably couldn't do that based on we had done the 60-lap stint earlier and really bled time bad with 10 to go in that. So we kind of knew what we were stuck doing. it does become a little bit of a formula. I guess there's a wild card that could happen every now and then where you have somebody in the playoffs that does something that, is further back in the field, and maybe short pits more than you would expect and just expects a caution. And, they've got a 10-lap window to do it that could be different. Outside of that, I wouldn't say anything surprised me, but it was, unique seeing the difference.
And to follow up, I guess, in other sports, we hear coaches study the tendencies of other coaches, and they know things. Look, I know you had some good runs with Ty previously, but maybe not as regularly up front competing against some of these particular crew chiefs.
Yep.
Are there tendencies or things that you're going to have to or having to learn because maybe you're going head-to-head against some of these guys more often, or should be more often throughout the year and into the playoffs? Since you're new to relatively.
Yeah, I think I've always paid attention to it, even though it didn't, necessarily play out in a winning the race situation or not. But you're still doing that. If you're running P10, sometimes you're still racing against Billy Scott and all this, and you tend to know, okay, will he take 2 tires or 4 tires in this situation? Will he short pit versus long run? I think that we all kind of know a little bit of that. It's nice to break tendencies a little bit for that, but only when it makes sense, right? It has to line up and pay the dividends potentially from some expected outcome.
All right, Chris, thank you for your time. Congrats on the win.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and continue our media availabilities with Coach Joe Gibbs, our race-winning owner. Thanks for joining us, Coach. We'll go right ahead and open it up for questions. If you have one, please raise your hand, and we'll get a mic to you. We'll start here with Chris, and then we'll go back to Trenton in the middle.
Chris Murdoch, NASCAR.com. Coach, it came down to a money stop once again, like it seems like so often some of these races do. I spent some time with the 11 crew on pit road after they came out of victory lane, and they just talked about how appreciative they were of the moment to put it on them. What can you say about them and just the testament to their mentality?
Well, I think, as we all know, it's a total team effort. You got to have everything. I've learned in pro sports, if you can't do one part of the performance for the day, you're not going to get anywhere. And thank goodness, that crew has taken it upon themselves. And they kind of told me, they said, hey, that's what we wanted. We come in third, got a chance to win, and come out first. So those guys, I think we've worked extremely hard with our pit crew, and we came from kind of a hole probably 18 months ago. But everybody at our race shop, our coaches, Chris and Brian, really worked hard. And a lot of credit goes to the athletes, too. They work extremely hard. 3 days a week, it's practice. 3 days a week, it is mandatory weight training. And they go through a lot. And, of course, everybody knows in our sport it means a lot. So, yeah, big deal.
We'll go in the middle here to Trenton.
Trenton Worsham, FrenchJudge.com. Somewhere along those lines, I spoke to Chris Gayle a little bit afterwards about I don't know, maybe secrets or so, or techniques that you guys use at Joe Gibbs that came out this week. Just talk about the pride that you have in those guys a little bit more, and your experience as a football coach coaching these guys. Like you said, 18 months ago, you guys had a lot of work to do, but now you're making the money stops and winning races because of it. So just highlighting the pit group guys this week, what's your take on that?
Yeah. I think, like I said, we made a decision when Coy, all the way back when Coy was running the show, he and Matt, and they made a decision to go with young athletes. The problem with that is it takes a while, conditioning, working with them, and you miss some of the veteran leadership. But I think this group over the last 2 years has really worked hard. It's a big deal in our sport, and so we put a lot of emphasis on it, and we're just thankful we got the guys we got there. I think we had a good day on pit road, period, today with all 4 of our cars.
All right, we'll go to Chris. And then in the back to Eddie.
Chris Knight, GetTrans.com. Coach, I was just wondering how important it was for Joe Gibbs Racing to sweep the weekends with Brandon Jones getting back in victory lane yesterday.
I thought it was great. I called JR his dad. He was in the winner's circle. And I called John Menard. John is huge in that program. And talked to everybody. And just thank the world of Brandon. You know, he's won races with us. A number of races. It's great to get him back, and I really think he's got a chance to really do something special this year, and so we'll see. But I know how much it meant to him and JR to get that win, particularly here at Darlington.
All right, we'll go in the back to Eddie, and then we'll come down here to Shane and Jacob.
Hey, Coach. Eddie Kalegi, Motorsports Today. Congrats on the wins this weekend. A lot of people have talked about with Denny Hamlin the longevity that he continues to show, and people wonder when he's going to fall off, and that clearly hasn't happened. Back-to-back wins, being his owner now for 2 decades now. Just what about Denny's work ethic continues to keep him at the top of his game?
Well, I can tell you this. You know, one of the things about going in the sim, and that's hard work. You're in there, and honestly, I think Denny is in the sim as much as anybody we have, any of the young guys. Stays after it, and I've told the story, I mentioned it the last time I talked about Denny. I went to him at Watkins Glen 2 years ago, and he had struggled road racing. They went as far as putting other setups on his car. And that guy went to work in the sim and worked as hard as he could, and he sat on 3 poles in road racing. And so you get somebody at that age that still has a drive to get it done. I think Denny has a real drive, and I think we're fortunate to have him.
We'll come down here to Shane in the middle, and then to Jacob.
Hey, Coach. Shane Connick, Charlotte Observer. Congratulations on the win.
You bet. Thank you.
And how cool is it to get it done here at Darlington in the 75th anniversary, and what it means for the sport?
It is cool. Everybody loves coming to Darlington. And I go all the way back to Denny when we first got him. Our final test for him before we signed him, JD, who found him, my son, said, let's put him at Darlington. He'd never been here. Let's put him in an Xfinity car and see what he does. He finished 8th. And JD told me, he said, I think we need to sign this guy. And I said, I agree. But he has had a feeling for Darlington. And of course, he's got a feeling for a number of tracks he's really good at. Just really appreciate Denny, his leadership with our group. He's our veteran guy. And just really appreciate him and what he's done for us. When you think about 56 wins, that's a huge deal. We hang banners at 1 o'clock tomorrow, and he's got 50. He's going to have 56 on the wall. that's a bunch. So I really appreciate him.
We'll come over here.
Guys bless us with a bunch of great guys. Yeah.
We'll go over here to Jacob.
Jacob Seelman, Race Face Digital Coach. Kind of following on from what Shane asked, you talked about Denny's leadership. How important is it with so much youth now between Bell and Chase and Ty at JGR on the Cup side? How important is it for JGR to still have a veteran leader like Denny who's been there, done that for as long as he has?
I think it's really important. I'll give you an example. This week in the sim, okay, Denny went in first before our young guys. And so I think it means a lot to us, his leadership. And you think about all he's got on his plate, too. You know, Denny's owner of 2311, all of that, and yet he can lead our group, really goes after it. And I think this week was a huge deal for us in that our young guys, they went into the sim after he was through getting it straightened out. So anyway, just really appreciate that. So, Denny's here.
Do we have?
I think you guys probably want to talk to him. I'll let you take over, Denny.
Thanks for joining us, Coach. Congratulations on the win.
You got it, man. Thank you.
And we're now joined by our race winner, Denny Hamlin. We'll go ahead and open it up right for questions. We'll start here with Jordan and then go to Chris.
You'll get your turn, Bob.
Yeah.
I got you, Bob.
You get the last one, so no, you go.
Jordan Bianchi, The Athletic. How hard was the pass today? It looked like passing was really difficult,
Yeah.
and it looked like a track position heavy race.
It was. Man, we're all just running so equal. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but we're just so close. The field is so close, and so it is. It makes it really, really difficult, and you know, very similar to last week. Like, you know, we're all kind of falling off at the same rate through the run, right? And we got 2 seconds of drop off here, right? That's good. But we're all doing it at the same rate, and because the cars are also very similar. And then once the tires really like wear out, we pit, and that's where typically you'll see a huge disparity in speed between the cars. And so very similar last week, where it's just, you know, right when you're getting to see some comers and goers, everyone just kind of pits to save themselves. And so, yeah, the field's tighter than it has ever been.
This is maybe a really stupid question. We see at intermediate tracks, mile and a halves, where, you know, Kansas, pick one, right? Where it's competitive and guys are able to race side by side. Why is it here that isn't the case necessarily?
Well, because those tracks have, so this has the same intermediate package, right? That those tracks have. The speeds are so much higher at those tracks, and there's more grip, so the draft plays more of a factor. Draft doesn't play as big a factor here. So where aerodynamics is probably, when you think about how you're going to set up your car, right, you think, I'm just going to throw out generic numbers, 80% of the grip you're going to get is going to come from aerodynamics. Here to track at a track like this, it's, I don't know, it's 50-50 mechanical to aerodynamics. And so you don't have the draft to keep things bunched up. You don't have the long straightaways to allow the guys that are behind to close. So, you know, where you see the best next-gen racing is at tracks that have a lot of grip, that has a tire that's got a lot of grip, and everyone's running a lot of throttle. And then what happens is then you see a lot of side drafting and bump drafting, and, you know, it just keeps us bunched up. But a track like this, it's just a big Richmond, where, you know, sometimes it's like, you know, the mechanical side of it, you just can't overcome it when the person out front has the clean air. He has such an advantage. You have to have multiple tenths of speed faster than them to challenge them and pass them. And there's not multiple tenths spread out between first and 30th on speed.
You cycled into the lead on lap 244. That was the first time that a driver had passed William Byron all day. He had led every single lap up to that point. Did you know that? And then what do you think about?
Yeah, we didn't pass him, right?
You cycled in the lead, but I mean, the fact that someone led 243 laps. I mean,
oh, he led 243 in a row?
Yeah, he led from the start of the green flag to that. You were the first one to take the lead other than him. Like, what do you think of that?
I think at Richmond I led all but 13 laps and had a flat tire at the end. I get how he feels. It sucks. Only I finished 20-something that day. It's painful. I mean, it's, you know, when you can get out front at this track, it is, I can't tell you. It feels like you're running qualifying speeds where you know, when I was running 20th, when I got, you know, kind of in that bad where we pitted early, others didn't. We go back to 20th. It was like, what happened? Like, the aerodynamics just takes over, and it's just, yeah, it's bad back there. And so, yeah, it's just for William, he probably was running 75-80% probably all day. And you're able to do that when you're out front.
We'll go to Chris and then to Bob.
Chris Murdoch, NASCAR.com. Denny, you kind of touched this on your front stretch interview, but it came down to a money stop. And in talking with your pit crew, they were super appreciative of having that opportunity to hit the money stop. From a driver's point of view, when you're coming down to that last pit stop and the money stop hits, what's that feeling like when you come out first?
So I knew coming in third, I was going to have my best roll of the day. So that is my fastest pit roll, my fastest speed into the box. I needed to put it perfectly on the sign so they don't have to adjust. Like, I needed to stack tenths and tenths and tenths on my side of the job And then once I get into the pit stall, they drop the right side. I'm like, okay, I know I did a good job on my metrics. Hopefully I didn't speed. But then when they drop the jack on the right, I know right then that, oh boy, this is going to be a heater. And so at that point, then you're just like, you still probably are going to need a little help. Again, the 2 car length gap that the 12 had on us, I don't know what that equates to. It's probably a second of total time. And so the pit crew has to make up some. I have to make up some. And when you stack all that together, you end up going from third to first.
Go to Bob.
Bob Parkhurst, Fox Sports. Any chance you try to get to 60 or want to get to 60 before the playoffs start, so it's not in your head?
I mean, I want to. I mean, truthfully, it's really 61, but it's, I don't know. I want to get it as soon as possible because you never know, when you don't race anymore. And so I think that these wins early in the season certainly are beneficial to getting some pressure off for playoff points, and certainly makes me feel good to keep piling on those wins.
And did you talk to Carl Edwards at all today,
Yeah.
since you had a scheme and
Yeah.
didn't tell you anything good or
Well,
what?
Well, he actually, I think he said, don't win this race. They might make you do a backflip. I said, there's no chance. I wouldn't make it. I probably would break the back of my head because I wouldn't even get full 180 flip. So he's way more athletic than I am in that sense. But I just told him that it was an honor to carry the scheme because truthfully, me and Carl probably talk more now, or have talked more now that he's out of the sport. We're no longer teammates, and this has been my relationship with most of my teammates, is that that the relationship grows after they're gone, and so really, getting to know Carl, and we're so blessed to have him coming back to the sport and the TV role. So I've just had some great conversations with him, and I loved the scheme. It was just like, it just was one that I raced against, one that I got beat by a lot, and so Carl is someone that you certainly look up to.
We're going to come down here to Dustin, then to Trenton, then to Chris.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. Denny, obviously a lot was made of last season with the organization going 0 for the last 18. Certainly there were some races where the 20 had opportunity. I think you had some opportunities. This season now have gone out and won 5 of the first 8. How do you look at the balance of power? I know there have been a couple races where you guys have won where maybe didn't lead the most laps. So are you really, that much stronger than others, or how do you look at, we've certainly seen some other organizations lead a bunch of laps, maybe win some races, maybe not.
I told the team, the crew chief, I said, don't get offended when I debrief and say that we probably had an 8th place car. It's just, and I think the same could be said for probably a couple C-Bells wins, right? Things just kind of fell nice. And so I don't think that we've been, short of last week. Last week was domination, but there hasn't been a lot of dominating Gibbs wins this year. And so, last week was one of the only ones, and then, C-Bell at Phoenix was dominating. So, I see it as we had two times that we had the best car, won the race. And then we've had other things just kind of fall our way. And, that's really what our job is on days like this, is to just hang around when you don't have a race-winning car. Don't stuff it in the fence trying to, get second when, third's a pretty good day. And, because anything can happen. And late cautions like this, I've had to go the other way. Texas, I can think of just last year or so. The race is over, and then a late caution, boom, I don't win. I finished 20-something. So we've had many get out of our hands, and it's finally starting to balance itself out. This one certainly is one that I didn't deserve really as a driver, but It feels good to get a win that you didn't have the best car, you didn't have race-winning speed, you just did your job just good enough to execute, and keep the team in the game, right? We just, very similar to Houston yesterday. Duke dominated the game, but Houston just kept hanging around just enough and capitalized when the others couldn't close, and that's what happened tonight.
So didn't you deserve it? You said this was one you didn't deserve. I mean, you talked about stacking
Well,
and everything else.
I think, certainly the pit crew will get their due this week, but we're always the one that gets all the fanfare for, the wins, and, it goes in our win column, and, that's what the fans see. But, this is truly a team sport, and I love that they, when the pit crew has an opportunity on a green-white checkered and do what they did like at Richmond a few years ago, take me from third to first, that is their Super Bowl. That is their moment to show out. And so even though we had probably 8-10 stops today, no one ever remembers it, but they're going to remember, and they're going to talk about this one, and it's great that they get their due.
We'll go to Trenton in the middle and then over to Chris.
Denny, TrentonFredStretch.com. Denny, the pit crew did get you the money stop to get you the win, but when did you know that you were going to win, that you had a shot to win this race? Because you said you're mired back, around 20th and stuff, didn't have the best car. Was that the moment? And to piggyback off of that, a lot of the Joe Gibbs pit crews were highlighted this week, with training and techniques and that kind of thing. Just talk about the positive light that the pit crews are getting this week on your team as well.
Yeah, I mean, and the reason they're getting and they're starting to be such a crucial part is just like what I said to Jordan. When the field is separated by nothing, and you can turn a 20th place car into a top 5 car by just placing it up front, well, the pit crew has a role in that, right? They just keep chipping away a little bit all day long, and next thing you know, they've helped the driver, they've helped the team make that car faster. So, they have such a crucial role in all this, and a lot of it is it's been more crucial in the next gen era than it was in the previous generation car because of how tight things are. So, when I had an indication we were going to win, it's really off of turn 2 on the restart. Once we were clear and clear by multiple car lengths, I knew it was over after that.
We'll come over here to Chris and then in the middle to Jacob.
Chris Knight, GetTrends.com. Denny, this is first back-to-back wins for you since 2012. Does that mean anything? And your thoughts on potentially going for 3 for 3 next weekend, considering you're the defending champion at Bristol?
Yeah, I mean, it means a lot. I mean, gosh, I sit here in the media center, and those of you that were there last week, I talked about how this is one that you can pound the chest, and it's like, we kicked everyone's ass. I kicked everyone's ass. Do I feel that way today? I don't, but it still feels good. It just doesn't have the feel when you go out and you dominate. But man, it shows up the same in the stat column, and no one will ever know years from now, right? They're just going to know that we won Darlington, and they'll forget why, which is unfortunate for them. But it's great that the team got me one here, and now, like I said to Chris Gayle, it's like, if we can win races where we got a 7th to 10th place car, then man, I feel good about going out there and executing when we've got the best car. Obviously, our pit crew is well and capable of keeping us up front. I can still do it. I can still do it at a high level, and so I like our outlook and to win a lot of races this year.
How do you feel about Bristol next week?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't even thought about Bristol. I mean, truthfully, I'm so week to week. I give each track, about 7 days of 8 days of true work, and that will start tomorrow afternoon.
We'll come over here to Jacob.
Jacob Seelman, Raceface Digital. Denny, 2 for you. First, when Coach was in here, he spoke very highly of particularly your sim work as one of the qualities that's kept you at a high level, even at an age where some other veterans have maybe tailed off. Can you speak to some of the things that you personally have put in to really fight to keep yourself at the top of your game like this?
Well, I mean, I think this is accurate. I do most of the sim work for all the cars. So, I my job, I'll be back in there tomorrow and working on this racetrack and working on tires, things like that. But I'm doing it for every team. And so I feel like I don't know. I only trust myself to do it. I don't know why. That's just, the control freak in me to want to have everything absolutely perfect. But I put a lot of work in, and it's not just for myself. It's for the benefit of all Joe Gibbs Racing, and they reap the benefits of the work that I put in through the week. And yes, they don't love it as much as probably I do, but I enjoy the process of being good at it. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that I'm not going to win these races on raw talent anymore. I'm going to have to outwork people. I'm just going to have to, look at things that maybe other people aren't looking at. And so I've learned to win them more with my mind than I have with my talent.
And I know it wasn't dominant like Martinsville was last week, but this is another track you've had a lot of success at over the year. Is the feeling similar to be able to get back to victory lane here, even though it was a little bit more recent than Martinsville?
I mean, Martinsville just had a special place because it had been so long, and it seemed like my wins here at Darlington have been spread out throughout my 20 years. I started out winning like every Xfinity race I ever, entered at this track for a while. And so I just had a lot of success here, and it's been spread out. But Martinsville was just like, it was really clumped together, and it was all at the beginning of my career. And, I just was really agitated about not being the best at that track for a long time. And so if that one felt good for those reasons, but it still feels good from my standpoint that, I can, at 44, I can still go out here and win back-to-back races and, be in contention week in, week out, and, still be at the top of my game. Nothing's dropped off.
We'll come over here to Claire.
Claire B. Lang. I think it was after you were here for a media avail earlier in the weekend, and we talked about confidence, and I said, you ever lack confidence? And you said no. How does a second win figure into all of that? You don't want to get cocky, and yet there was something on X this week that it said, if you boo Denny, I think it was Michael Jordan, if you boo Denny, he's just going to come back and he's going to rub it in your face. It's going to happen, right?
Yeah, there's motivation in it for sure. I mean, right? You love getting, excitement out of the people. You like making them feel a sort of way, whatever way that might be, positive or negative. It's good to know that you have that effect on someone. And so, I don't know. It's I love the fans. They don't really love me that much, but it's still, I think it's just my personality, and I understand that, and I bring it upon myself most times, but I love it, and I love the reaction that I get out of people.
When you're doing lap after lap, and a guy is like leading every lap, what's going on in that Denny Hamlin head?
I'm just, truthfully, I'm thinking about how can I get the best finish for myself. I don't have the race-winning car. I'm not going to put it right on the fence and push this thing to going and making a mistake and turning a top 5 day into a day where I crash out and lose a bunch of points. So I'm always thinking about how I can get the best day I can. And truthfully, it's something weird that goes on my brain. Every stage that goes on, I will move the goalpost of the goal for the day. Obviously, when I start the race, the goal is to win. And by the time I get to lap 50 to 100, I will know, do I have a race-winning car or not? And I will instantly shift to, okay, here's what I have. I need to finish between blank and blank spot today. That's what this car is capable of doing. How can I execute that? And as stages go on, maybe my track position changes, maybe for the better, maybe for the worse. It could have gone the other way. What if I had a terrible pit stop and I've been 20th with 50 to go? Well, at that point, I would have said top 15. Get myself in the top 15, and then I'm going to consider this day, I did the best job that I could. So I'm always moving the goalpost on myself throughout a race. And today was just one where when I got mired in the back of the pack, it was top 10. That's what I thought I was at my ceiling. But a caution comes and it flips the field upside down, and next thing you know, I'm up front, and it's like, okay, I don't have anything for that guy, but I've got everything, I've got enough for everyone else. And so second place was the ceiling until that last caution.
We'll take one final question from Reed.
Yeah, basically, Reed Spencer with NASCAR Wire. You basically just answered my question. As decisive as that final pit stop was, the caution that interrupted that cycle of pit stops seemed to be just as important in terms of restoring your track position.
The last Larson one?
No, in the second
Yes. That was the key moment. I just don't know how we were going to make it back up towards the front. You know, if I think that we had a 7th to 10th place car and we were kind of mired in like 15th around that time, we did something to change the quota, right? Like, okay, well, how are we can't just pit with everyone. We're just going to get stuck here in this spot. And so we went long, like we always go long. My crew chiefs always leave me out there long and tell me just go out there and optimize lap time. And luckily, a caution fell the right way. Now, while it might seem lucky, at Las Vegas, it went the other way. I was running top 2 at the end of the race. We pit, caution comes out, and we finished 25th. So it's just, you do this enough times, the odds just, hopefully it just balances itself out. And, you know, we got one back that we, you know, should have had at Las Vegas. And so that caution was crucial, and it really changed the day, it looked like, for most of the top 10.
All right, Denny, thanks for your time, and
Thank you.
congrats again on the win.